St. Louis sports fans, go deeper with STL Sports Central Insiders. Get exclusive access to Bernie, Randy, Claves, Jamal Mayers, and more. Plus, your chance to watch a Blues game in the alumni box with Jamal himself. Monthly giveaways, Bernie's columns all week, and support for local sports media. Join now at stlsportscentral.com. It's been 1 week since Sonny Gray was traded away from the Cardinals, and now another veteran might be on the way out, per a new report from Katie Wu of The Athletic. Willson Contreras, more willing than ever, it seems, to get rid of his no-trade clause and be on the move this offseason. And that would open up so many more doors for the Cardinals, eliminating his contract from the payroll and the inevitable Nolan Arenado trade that's going to happen in weeks, months, any day now. So the Cardinals seem to really be kind of wiping that payroll clean in Chaim Bloom's first offseason. This is Card Central 365. All content brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Joe Roderick, Brenden Schaeffer with you here. And B. Schaeffer, not really a big surprise that Willson Contreras would be willing to waive the no-trade clause, especially with what he's seen all around him. And the guy, you know, he probably wants a second ring, so willing to move on from this Cardinal offseason.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. We can't be too surprised to see this type of reporting come down. Now, to be clear, I don't think the Cardinals are just going to give him away, but I do think he has a very movable contract that could lead to a trade if he's willing to go to a contender, right? Like previously, if he was going to be pretty limited with his list of preferred destinations, would that have looked like, yeah, I'll play with my brother in Milwaukee? Like, I don't really know how expansive that list would have been, but if he's saying, okay, I see what you did. You traded Sonny Gray. Last offseason, you talked about doing something like this. You said you were going to trade Arenado. Never really happened, so we had a fun little season. We did fall short of the goals, but yeah, that wasn't really a rebuild, so I was still happy to be here. I think, Joe, seeing the rebuild kind of come together with the Sonny Gray trade is probably almost predictably what maybe opens up Willson Contreras to, you know, be a little bit more acclimated to the idea of going somewhere else. It seems as though the Cardinals wouldn't have much of a problem getting something done here. It's not like Arenado's contract where there's a bunch of money that you don't really know what the return on your investment's going to be. With Willson Contreras, I know he's not behind the plate anymore, but he has still been a very productive hitter over the 3 seasons he has spent with the Cardinals. OPS totals of 826, 848, and even last year, slightly down, but 791 was 23% above league average. The OPS plus was 123. So still a very productive middle of the order type of bat that I think a lot of teams are going to be interested in. You can plug him in at first base. You can play him at DH. You could play him in the corner outfield if you really wanted to. If you need catcher depth, I don't know that he would be totally opposed to going back behind the plate. So I think there would be a lot of options there to where the Cardinals can get some meaningful pieces in return and probably not have to eat a bunch of money like you did with the Sonny Gray contract, if I had to guess.
This is for me, this is a home run trade and a win-win all the way around. I think this is probably the easiest, best case scenario of trading somebody on this Cardinal roster right now, as far as everything that would be included in this. With Sonny Gray, you had to find the right spot for him. And then there was so much that had to do with the contract and the right money and everything that seemed to be navigated pretty damn well for what we see the initial return being. And, you know, years will tell if it plays out that way. With Nolan Arenado, it's going to be so much of that, the lofty contract that he has and what kind of return you're going to get based on how much you're going to be willing to eat with that. It's going to be even more complicated in the Sonny Gray deal. But with somebody too, like then you go the other route with Brendan Donovan and a guy that's under control. You want that return to be perfect. And what we talked about yesterday, you know, they've said they want to be blown away by that. What does blown away mean in the eyes of the Cardinals? And then it becomes a bidding war. With Willson Contreras, it's a position that you could look at 10, 12 teams that you can look at around the league and go, this would be an upgrade at first base right away. And then you look at about 18 million a year. Go look at what Christian Walker got last year. Go look at what Cody Bellinger could get this year. And I know Bellinger is an outfielder that could also play first base, but let's put the financials in the same realm as what Cody Bellinger kind of brings in. And you look at what Pete Alonso is going to get and how massive of a deal that's going to be. Willson Contreras could very easily be a bargain to a lot of Major League Baseball teams out there this offseason who are looking to upgrade that first base position. And I think the return back would be very favorable to the Cardinals.
Yeah, I believe that that's true as well. It remains to be seen, but as we're kind of laying out the foundation of what this could look like, he is owed that $36.5 million over the next 2 years. You mentioned 18 a year. There is a $5 million buyout associated with a 2028 option. So you do have to count that he's owed a grand total of $41.5 million, which puts it a little bit higher than 20 per season. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the Cardinals chip in enough cash to cover the buyout, let's say. But I think if Willson Contreras were a free agent this offseason, would it be a stretch to imagine he could get a contract similar to that Christian Walker deal that was 3 years, 50 million, whatever it was? Like, he's a little overpriced compared to that, probably because they bought him as a catcher and now he's just batting. But I think he plays a decent first base. He really has assimilated to that role defensively, I think better than people expected. He's a solid athlete. I love having Willson Contreras around. I think there might be some teams that say, not that we're not willing to welcome his personality into the clubhouse, but we just have to make sure when we do that, like, are we ready for everything that means? Because I think you get the most out of Willson Contreras when you let Willson be Willson. And so just being comfortable with that is probably an aspect of it that teams will have to consider. But you're going to get a really productive middle of the order bat. And I think there is flexibility to where you could put him defensively because he's already shown a willingness to switch positions one time. So, yeah, that should open up a number of teams to willingness to consider, hey, what does it look like to grab Willson Contreras? If you're the Cardinals, you're saving money no matter what you do. I think Willson is productive enough that you don't want this to just be a salary dump. And so I would be willing, just like with the Sonny trade, to chip in financially. Probably not going to take half like it did with Gray, but you can chip in a little bit to potentially boost the return that you would get. And Joe, if it's me, I'm looking for arms. I'm still the Cardinals trying to stockpile as many potentially usable arms as I can. Infield wise, you probably are set. Like, even if you trade Donovan and Gorman, you could potentially slot in a Sajacy at third and a Wetherholt at second for the foreseeable future. I'm not saying Sajacy is going to be a long-term fixture there, but again, 2026 is not the year where the Cardinals are trying to max out their win total. So, if that's your infield, you can live with that. I would like a right-handed bat in the outfield potentially. That's an interesting thing to target. If you have a controllable right-handed hitting outfielder, I could see the benefit of that, depending on the way that they go with Lars Nootbaar, and pair that bat next to Victor Scott at second in center, when you have a pretty left-handed heavy infield, because Alec Burleson would shift to first base if Willson Contreras wasn't here. So, like, as much as I love Willson Contreras for the Cardinals and seeing him on this team, there's a lot of reasons, including being able to free up Burleson for a more natural position, that I think would benefit the team in the direction that they're going. The only question is, what would that return look like? But to your point, I think it would be a pretty good one.
And, that's also something, too, that could be addressed. The right-handed bat, that's something that could be addressed in free agency. That's something you go out there and you get a veteran, you get somebody, a young enough guy that you think could be here for 4 or 5 years and be part of the rebuild if you want to take that chance early with that. I don't have names in front of me with that.
What's the
but
dollars that you would spend on that is my question. I just don't know if you do that this winter,
And but also too, to your point with that, and that, I had read about the buyout too. Is that something that we worry about when it comes to this deal? I mean, the 2028 contract is 17 million or 17.5 million. Is that really, if right now you look, there has not been a whole lot of drop off in production with Willson Contreras year after year with the OPS. You're looking 3 years down the road. Is that something that you're really gonna, haggle about when it comes to a trade?
It's plausible, Joe, that 3 years down the road, whether he won't still be a Cardinal by that point, but it is plausible that whatever team Willson Contreras is on, that they say, yeah, we'll pay you the 17. Like, rather than pay 5 to make you go away and buy you out, we'll pay you the 17. It's hard to know how that would impact a trade. I think you largely just have to look at it. If you're the other team, you would probably talk to the Cardinals and say, we're good with Willson Contreras. He's going into his age 34 season. We think he can be productive at age 34, 35. Chip in a little bit of money just in case, like whether it's used specifically for the buyout or if it just helps their payroll this year. We'll chip in a little bit of money. We'll tell you the schedule along which it will be deposited into, the accounts of that opposing team. I think it's just a way to kind of offset some of the total costs of it. But I agree with you that I wouldn't put the percentage at 0 that Willson Contreras gets that option picked up for 2028 at $17 million, because as much as I do think he'll decline, what if he moves into a ballpark where he's playing half his games in a hitter-friendly place and the power numbers go up? And instead of dropping off from the 791 OPS, which is still very productive, he OPS is 820 again in 2026. Is it a stretch to imagine him maintaining an 800 OPS for the next 2 seasons and that team going, sure, we'll do it again for 17 mil? Not crazy to imagine that. No. So I think it's a very movable contract, but a lot of times I think you could end up seeing like the sweetener be the Cardinals agreeing to chip in a little bit of money. And then if you can get a pitching prospect and an outfield prospect in return, I think that would be really reasonable. Or hell, just get 2 arms, because we know that pitching makes the world go round. And like you said, you can figure out your outfield situation in other ways. What if Jordan Walker becomes somebody who you want to keep around, right? Like it just seems like that would be the one area of the position player group that you don't have a surplus at this point, is right-handed hitting outfielders, because the one that you do have is Walker, and you're very skeptical of what his future looks like. So that's why I bring it up, but I still would say arms should dominate everything that Chaim Bloom is looking to do this winter.
Look at some of the potential options that for teams that would be interested in a Willson Contreras, and we'll do so right after this.
You want a backyard paradise next summer? Talk to Merrimack Pools and Outdoors now. No surprises, great design, straight pricing, and you could be swimming by Memorial Day. Hit SplashSTL.com. Merrimack Pools and Outdoors, turning big Griswold dreams into real St. Louis backyards for 25 years.
And you know who had a big day yesterday? It was Brenden Schaeffer, because Missouri finally was able to use the DraftKings Sportsbook app in your state. And Brenden, you were able to, I know you jumped in on a few of those parlays yesterday. You looked at the money lines. You were real excited about the under in the Monday Night Football game.
Did not work out. That one did not work out. I will admit as much to you on that. But listen, there was a lot of good things that happened, right?
You and many others, me included, we've jumped in on those DK specials that they have there on the DraftKings app. Made ourselves a little money on the one shot on goal that the Blues got last night.
Go Blues. Way to come through. You got the shot on goal. I always, never in doubt.
And on Sunday, we will be cheering for the Kansas City Chiefs to gain 1 yard.
1 yard, gang.
1 yard to double up our $50 bet there. You can do that as well if you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. You could do it if you've already have the app. We are just giving you free money on on this today, but we'll give you even more free money if you download the promo code STL Sports. You will make that first $5 bet. You get $300 in bonus bets instantly. No waiting, no nonsense. Just pure action by America's top-rated sportsbook app, and you can use those bonus bets on anything. I think I have, $46 right now in bonus bets just sitting there that I am waiting to find the perfect thing to bet that on.
Okay.
And maybe I'll do that on a college basketball game tonight. You can download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use code STL Sports, and new Missouri customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. That's code STL Sports. The crown is yours in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility and restrictions apply. One single use odds boost per customer. Market boosted to plus 100 odds. Max bet $50. Expires at 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time, December 7th. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.
So we sit here and we look at what teams would be the perfect match for the for a Willson Contreras. I jumping out at me right away, I will look at a team like the Diamondbacks. I think that's the one that I look at, that is a team that's on the cusp of the playoffs, where they're a couple years ago have not, they've lost a couple players here and there. Corbin Carroll's a star in Major League Baseball. You want to build around him. They are a team that wants to compete in a very, very tough division. And adding a piece like Willson Contreras doesn't seem like a high risk for them to make some improvements, especially after you lose Christian Walker 2 years ago. You trade Josh Naylor last year. It's the first base position is one that, it's there for the taking for somebody like Willson.
Yeah, I could see the benefit of that. I'm trying to look up exactly how they filled first base last year, because you can then figure out what to kind of compare it to. But I think the best part of the Willson thing is that he can play other spots if you decide that you need to. I'm not saying it's going to necessarily be that he is, the most productive defensively elsewhere, but he assimilated to first base pretty effectively. So, yeah, I would think that there is there's a lot of merit potentially to Willson going to a team like the Diamondbacks when they really didn't backfill their first base spot as effectively after the Christian Walker departure.
Pavin Smith was their first baseman last year, especially after the Naylor trade. And the Diamondbacks also in a tough spot too right now, in an interesting spot where the reports are that they're trying to move on from Ketel Marte. So they could be in the mix for a really, really busy offseason when it comes to trades.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you're right. Naylor was good for them, but once he departed, they kind of had a cast of characters filling it out. What was Pavin Smith's overall numbers last year? I don't believe he had okay numbers, DH and first baseman. So, you could go that route. I think Willson Contreras, though, would be an update to their lineup. You could DH him, you could first base him. If they move on from Ketel Marte and that shifts somebody else around, maybe there's a corner outfield spot that opens up. Generally, I think they're pretty set in the outfield, but you could certainly go that direction. And I don't know. What I want to know is if any team would be crazy enough and say, you know what, let's just have him as a catcher as well. Be willing to do that. I think that ship is probably sailed, but it's interesting to think that it more sailed because the Cardinals were in a spot where they were like, yeah, we're not, we don't need to necessarily continue to go down this road with the way our roster is lined up. But I think the flexibility there could offer some options.
And, we both saw it last year, like when he showed up to spring training, just how much more weight he had put on, how bigger he had gotten, because he knew he didn't have to be in catcher shape for the entire season. Right. And I just,
he looks strong, man.
It showed in the back of his mind. I'm sure that Willson Contreras will tell you that, yes, I can go back there and I can catch. But I think the body will tell him otherwise. And I also think that just the fact of, he's probably put in so much work and is going to this offseason putting in so much work defensively at first base, that the skills that he worked on for his entire career up until he was 32 years old have probably diminished more than he would care to admit.
Well, and I think it's also, this was probably going to be the type of career progression you saw Contreras have from the moment the Cardinals signed the contract. You didn't necessarily think it would be 5 years catching. Maybe you thought you'd get 3 out of him, but I don't know. At the end of the day, the fact that you're still getting the production offensively is what I think teams are going to focus on. Because when he signed with the Cardinals, I don't know that there were a bunch of teams clamoring for him the way that the Cardinals needed him, because there was maybe that question about him as a catcher. But I think none of that is necessarily the point anymore. I do think it's going to be more about, hey, look, this is a productive bat that has been as consistent as anybody. And ideally, by keeping him not behind the plate, you're able to get more games out of him. Remember, that was part of the conversation as well when the Cardinals decided to make that switch is, you know what, he got injured behind the plate the previous season, and we weren't able to access his bat because of that. So I think that's another reason that, yeah, he probably won't be a catcher anymore, but there's trade value here, and that should bode well for the Cardinals and Bloom as they're looking to get something done. I think from the beginning, not in a way that is, oh, we don't like Willson Contreras, but in a way that veterans don't fit the direction that we're going in 2026. I think from the beginning, the Cardinals would have loved to have been able to trade Willson Contreras for fair value, and now his willingness warming up is likely going to facilitate that possibility.
Winter meetings begin on Sunday and will be going on all next week down in Orlando, Florida. Our very own Mike Claiborne will be down there, and we'll be talking to him each and every day that he's down at the winter meetings and get the latest rumors and rumblings from around all of the baseball GMs, agents, players, whoever else decides to show up down at the winter meetings this year, and we'll have all of that coverage for you here on STL Sports Central. Another name to throw into the ring for a possible trade chip this offseason for the Cardinals, one that's already has started off a week ago red hot and is only going to continue to get more and more fun to cover over these next few weeks and months. Until then, he is Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been Card Central 365 each and every day here on STL Sports Central, and brought to you each and every day by our friends at DraftKings. The crown is yours.